Hello, friend. I want to tell you about the Seat Ibiza car, both for those who need a means of transport that requires little maintenance and for lovers of dynamic driving. When it comes to the 1.4 TDI diesel, a lot depends on luck. You can buy a good engine and drive it for a few years without failure, but many units encounter the problem of axial play on the crankshaft. Unfortunately, such a defect qualifies the engine for replacement, although you can still drive it for a while. 80 horsepower units with a variable geometry turbocharger often have problems, which, if not professionally repaired, do not have full efficiency. The best diesels. In our opinion, if you want to buy an Ibiza III with a diesel engine, you should choose the 1.9 unit, depending on your needs. The sluggish 1.9 SDI or the dynamic 1.9 TDI. What's more, in the latter variant, there are several power levels to choose from 101 to 160 horsepower. Even the basic version gives excellent performance, and fuel consumption is not much higher than the smaller 1.4 TDI. Apart from the faults traditional for older diesels, these engines are not burdened with factory defects. Seat itself called the 130 horsepower version Sport and FR versions, and 160 horsepower is the highest level. This engine powered the Cupra version, in which it is an alternative to the petrol version. Of course, it is difficult to expect a fully sporty experience in a car powered by a TDI engine, but the performance is impressive. The efficient engine provides great acceleration with a fuel consumption of around 6,100 kilometers. Its opposite is the aforementioned 1.9 SDI engine. The clunky unit without a supercharger is a typical workhorse. It develops a modest 64 horsepower, but thanks to such a low effort, it is characterized by great durability. It offers the weakest performance of all. Even the torque is lower than most petrol engines, but with a minimum of care, it rewards you with trouble-free operation for years. The best petrol cars. The same cannot be said about the petrol 1.4 16.5, although much depends on the version. 3 power versions were used in the Ibiza: 75 horsepower, 86 horsepower, and 101 horsepower. We absolutely advise against the weakest one, which has problems with almost everything, from hydraulic valve clearance compensators through worn piston rings to a clogged breather. In 2006, a modernized 86 horsepower version was introduced, in which all these problems were eliminated, provided that the user takes care of changing the oil. 86 horsepower is enough power in the small Ibiza to call the car dynamic enough for normal, everyday driving. The 101 horsepower version offers even more, interestingly with less torque, 126 instead of 132 nanometers, and more high-revving characteristics. If the car were 10 years older, one could already call such a sports version. The alternative to this engine is a 1.68V engine with the same power but much less effort. This is a bigger sure thing which works perfectly when powered by LPG. Exactly the same can be said about the 105 horsepower 16V version and the largest petrol in the range, the 2.08V, which, thanks to 115 horsepower, provides good performance, and at the same time we are dealing with an engine that is completely unexerted. Unfortunately, quite fuel hungry. When it comes to the best performance and sporty experience, it is worth focusing on the 1.8T unit. Available in 150 horsepower FR and 180 horsepower Cupra versions, it gives great performance and makes the Ibiza a full-blooded hot hatch. Unfortunately, it is the most demanding in terms of operation. You have to take care of the timing drive and hydraulic valve clearance compensators, and there are as many as 20 of them, 5 valves per cylinder. You cannot say that the engine is faulty, but you simply have to be aware that this is not a pour-and-drive type unit. If you regularly change the oil every 10,000 kilometers and take care of the turbocharger, you will certainly not regret the purchase. And tuning enthusiasts can easily squeeze 200 horsepower and more from this engine. Summing up all the engines, the third-generation Seat Ibiza compared to its successor, is not burdened with the stigma of "you don't know what to choose." Even the sports versions, petrol and diesel, enjoy excellent opinions, which cannot be said about the Ibiza Cupra 1.4 TSI with a double turbocharger. When choosing the engine version to suit your needs and tastes, we recommend the following scheme. I don't need good performance as long as the car runs 1.4 16.5 86 horsepower or 1.9 SDI. I expect good performance and high durability. 1.68V, 16.5, 2.08V, or 1.9 TDI 101 horsepower. I need a dynamic car. 1.8, 150 horsepower, or 1.9 TSI, 130 horsepower. I want a sports car. 1.8, 180 horsepower, or 1.9 TDI 160 horsepower. Has minor faults. In general, Seat Ibiza IIIs are like Skodas from that period, almost as durable, almost as reliable as Volkswagens, but struggling with minor faults, mainly due to poorer assembly and lower quality. That is why electric and electronic failures are not uncommon. Users complain about faults in accessories, engine control computer, coils, electric power steering, alternators, and equipment. Statistically, the most common faults are wipers, washers, and central locking. Also, non-electrical equipment, such as the air conditioning system. Coolant leaks are common. The suspension can be considered durable, and if something happens, easy access to cheap parts is also an advantage. And we are not talking about poor quality, but branded, because manufacturers of components for such a popular car, for them, Ibiza, Polo, and Fabia are the same model, are fighting for the customer. What's more, even theoretically expensive parts for diesel engines, injectors, turbocharger, dual-mass flywheel, are relatively cheap in the VW group, especially in the case of such years. It is no wonder that despite relatively frequent failures, opinions about this car remain good. Sometimes it is better to repair something 3 times for pennies than once, and very expensively. Corrosion is not a big problem for this model, but it does occur on the edges of the wheel arches, sometimes the doors. Unfortunately, the quality of workmanship is not up to the standards that Volkswagen had, for example. The interior can creak, and the plastics scratch easily. It is not uncommon to see a dull headlight. Service statistics collected from workshops indicate that of all the systems in a car, the engine and its accessories are the most frequently repaired. Second comes the electrical system, and then the cooling and brake systems. Beware of turbo versions. When buying supercharged versions, you will often hear from the seller that the turbocharger has been reconditioned. If we are talking about a 1.8T engine, it is worth reviewing all the invoices from the repair, if the user has them. If the timing drive and valve clearance compensators were replaced at the same time, then it can be assumed that the largest expenses, provided that the repair is correct, will no longer concern you. More attention should be paid to TDI versions, especially the more powerful ones. If the turbocharger was replaced with a new one, be sure to check what else was done. Lubrication lines and intercooler are the minimum that should be included in the repair. Of course, you can do it at cost and sell the car. You can also regenerate the turbocharger and count on it working properly. The companies that do this are already well specialized in devices for TDI engines, but the fact is that regenerating a variable geometry turbo is still a lottery. Thank you for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I didn't mention, be sure to write about them in the comments.